Mainly because of the fact that I made up in my mind and watching how my father did not function in my life, I was intentional about making sure that I was going to be a part of my son's lives. And that I wanted to make sure that which I did not receive as love from my father, I was intentional about making sure that I did it with my sons.
Well, praise the Lord, everyone. Pastor Eric Lambert here from Bethel Deliverance International Church, welcoming you to the Shifting Times podcast. Now, if this is your first time joining us, we welcome you. This podcast deals with biblical issues, political issues, and the whole gamut of cultural despair, physical ailments, financial difficulties, whatever area you are being challenged. This podcast is designed to help you draw a biblical conclusion, apply those truths to your life, and then wind up walking in victory. Now, today joining us is my dear friend, Apostle Gilbert Coleman. God bless you, Apostle. How are you?
I am excellent, Eric. What a blessing it is for me to be able to share with you today, man.
Praise God. It is so good to have you. And truth be told, we go back a long ways, but we don't want to say how far back.
Exactly.
Just a little more than yesterday.
Yes, that's for sure. That is for sure.
And we want to talk today about men. I think it's time that we deal with the problem of men being involved in kingdom work, starting in the home, then in ministry, and then ultimately in society at large. Now, God has gifted you to deal with the absence of men and to provide motivation to put them back into the process of reaching our communities with men of God. What do you think is the primary issue that has caused our men to back away from Christian service?
Eric, I truly believe that one of the major reasons is that men saw the house of God as being more feministic. They see all of the emotion, and of course, you know that predominantly our churches are now 67% female.
Wow.
As it relates to the population of our churches. And so as a result of it, it can become very emotional. Not that there should not be any emotion,
right,
because the Lord gave us our emotions. Yes. But men see that, and they see that then becoming now more feminine in its style and in its composition. And so as a result of it, they are reluctant to be a part of that because they're looking for something sometimes that seemingly is more transactional than it is relational.
Wow.
Where women are very relational.
Yes.
Men are transactional.
Yes.
Men more so are, they're more oriented toward what is it that a man does for his work. They're more interested in that than they are in just being in relationship with someone. And so as a result of it, women, like I say, are more relational. They talk about the recipes. They talk about the kids, the grandkids. They got a host of pictures that they carry now on their phones. But men are not necessarily like that. And so I see that as probably one of the most primary reasons as to why men don't actually desire to be a part of the Christian church.
Wow. That is true. We find that often. We're very disconnected. And as you were saying, the ratio of women in the church, it's more than we've ever seen before.
Yes.
Some people say it's because most of our men, African-American men, are in jail. Could that factor into the absence of men in church?
And I would definitely agree with that, for certain. What I've learned, though, and of course, watching you, that would be the antithesis, because seeing what happens here at Bethel is a total difference from what we're discussing right now, because you can come here and you see a great male population. But I also believe, Eric, that a great portion of it is that men are looking for a role model. They're looking for someone who can actually give them an understanding of what it means to be a man. Because many of our men don't really have any true identity. Mainly because of the fact that we come up in homes that in most instances are led by a female. And so because the homes are led by a female, men now are looking for someone who can demonstrate to them exactly what it means for them to actually be a man in today's society, especially when today's society is doing everything they can to feminize a man. Even in our pulpits.
Wow. Now, speak to the issue God has given you this ministry, transforming the minds of men.
Yes.
And I see here today you gave me the newest rewrite,
Yes, sir.
Transforming the Minds of Men. Now, we're going to give you some information as to how you can get this book in your hand. And so look on the bottom third of the screen, and the information will be printed there for you. But we want to get this book into the hands of men. Would you recommend it goes into the hands of their women as well?
100%. Most recently, Eric, I held a breakfast for women.
Okay.
At their request.
Okay.
They were on me because their phrase to me was this. They said, every transformed man needs a transformed woman. And so the book that I just released behind this is called Transforming the Minds of Women.
Oh, wow.
And man, it was just a major success. Over 100-something women that showed up for this breakfast, and they bought every book I had.
In the black community, though, I mean, we can attest to the fact that, as you said earlier, our homes were dominated by women. We had fathers, but a lot of our fathers tended to put a lot of responsibilities in mothers. Like, I would go to my father for permission for things. He said, go ask your mother.
Yes.
And everything. So you kind of get that mindset that mama runs things. In the black culture, we find that our men don't know how to take a leadership role in the family, in society, and then ultimately in church. When you say transforming the minds of men, what's your goal?
My goal is to bring a man into what I was saying a moment ago, into self-identity.
Okay.
Because many of them, again, like I said, they don't know who they are because of the fact that they were never told who they are. I'm going to be real transparent. My father, he was there in our home, no doubt about that. Hard-working man. I mean, he worked overtime, double time, triple time. He worked all the time. Okay, that was why my father worked. So he gave me that example.
Okay.
However, he never taught me any male life skills.
Okay.
He never ever taught me actually he never taught me how to drive a car.
Wow.
I had to learn that from someone else, you know, because he was always too busy doing other things. I never knew my father to tell me he loved me.
Okay.
I was also in a position to where I played sports. You know, the whole time I was in school, I played baseball. He showed up for one game. I played basketball. He never came to any games at all. And so therefore, even though he was there in the home, he was still absent. And that's exactly what many men in our culture experience, where they have a man who's there in the household, but what he has been taught is just to be a provider. He has never, ever been taught to be a nurturer.
Now, that's very good. When you had sons, when you became a man and you had sons, how did you intentionally try to change that model that you were exposed to with your dad?
Mainly because of the fact that I made up in my mind, and watching how my father did not function in my life, I was intentional about making sure that I was going to be a part of my sons' lives.
Okay.
And that I wanted to make sure that that did not receive as love from my father. I was intentional about making sure that I did it with my sons. Many men have watched me over the years, and they see how I kiss my sons. Now, of course, the scripture says that we should greet each other with a holy kiss, is what the word says. But there are many men, in fact, I'll never forget, one of the deacons at our church, he's gone home to be with the Lord now. And I was teaching that, you know, to the men, you know, about greeting each other that way. And so this one day he comes in, and I embraced him, and I kissed him on his cheek. He said, hey, he said, you all right? He said, everything okay, Pastor?
That's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, right. Because he was never accustomed to any man greeting him that way without there being anything effeminate, you know, connected to it. Okay. And so that's why, like I said, I wanted to make sure that I did that with my sons. And right now, my oldest boy, he's 52 years old. We see each other. We greet each other that way. Yes, my other two boys, we greet each other that way. So it's a matter then, like I said, of a man being intentional about expressing love.
Yeah.
And to know that there's nothing wrong, you know, with being able to express that to another man, and there's nothing homosexual connected to it.
That's a great challenge that you have been given by the Lord to transform the minds of men. In Genesis, God comes down looking for Adam, which always strikes me as a loving action, because in all reality, God should have just been angry and killed him.
I agree
But
with
he
you.
comes down looking for him, and he asks the question, Adam, where are you? Man, where are you? Do you think that question is still coming out of God's mouth in 2025?
Undoubtedly, Eric, undoubtedly that question is still looming large in the church because, again, like I was saying earlier, we're not relational. And it's just so heartbreaking for me. I see men come in, they join the ministry, and when they come in, especially if they join as a family, a husband and a wife, the wife is automatically swooped up by the other women in the church. And they want to know her name and let's get together and that sort of thing. While I watched it and the men will stand around the walls looking for another man to come and engage him and nobody talks to him. And so then he leaves with the mindset that this church is not friendly.
Right.
And so I've made it an intention that when men started coming to freedom, I would intentionally, in myself, go and engage them. One of the reasons why Transform the Minds of Men was created is because I started a men's Bible study when I first started pastoring the church. And there was a gentleman that came from, you remember WDAS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he was one of their salespersons, and he came to our church and he was asking me if we would consider doing a broadcast on their station. It was just supposed to be as the church initially.
Right.
He sat down in my office with me though, and he said, first question out of his mouth, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm talking to you right now." He said, "But no, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I have not seen not one woman, but I've seen 25 men. What are you doing?" I said, "All I did was to give them a safe space to where they could come and be able to talk about their issues without feeling any sort of, I guess, any sort of judgment from women being around, or that they would be intimidated by their presence and not want to open up."
Yeah.
And so because I gave them that platform whereby they could talk, is the reason why they started flocking to the Bible study. So he says to me, "Well, look, would you consider doing a radio broadcast on our station just for men?"
Wow.
So would you pray about that?
Wow.
I said, "I don't have to pray about that." I said, "Let's do it." And as a reward for that decision, we were the first men's ministry to ever hit the radio in the nation.
That's great.
In the nation.
That's great.
And so men, as a result of that now, coming into identity in Christ, because many of them have never known what it was to have a relationship with Christ. They had a church relationship, or they would have a relationship with us,
Yeah, that's true.
but never had a relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
And so that has been my intention when it comes down to transforming a man's mind, is to bring him to a place to where he can be holistic and to understand not just to be a provider, not just to be a protector, but to become a son of God.
See, you're a very friendly person. I've always said that. You're very friendly. You know everybody. And you walk into a room, it lights up, you engage people. Now, I'm the other person that you talked about. I came up with a Jamaican father who, when I used to go to his jobs, he used to tell me, "Eric, don't trust anybody but your mother." And so I grew up having that mentoring.
Yeah.
And so I came to Christ when I was 14. It took me over 10 years to trust God because Daddy said, "Don't trust anybody."
Wow.
So for me, I was saved, but I trust him. What are you talking about? Trust him. I didn't even love him. I was glad I wasn't going to hell. That was the extent of my salvational experience. And so I could never do what you do. I'm that person you say that's disengaged, that, I protect, I provide, and I guide. But when it comes to that other part, even now, I said to the Lord, I can't understand why you put me in this role, because I have to interact. That's not my socialization. So when you look at the African American culture, because in the Japhethite culture, they're very open and we're very closeted. We're very guarded.
True.
Is there hope for us? And realistically, I know with God all things are possible. But realistically, psychologically, can we as African American men break that mold of being disconnected, untrusting? Now, I know in your mind you'll probably say, yes, we can. But talk to me, Eric, now, not the pastor, bishop, and all that other nonsense.
I understand.
But can we really offer hope to the African American man that provides an opportunity for him to step out of hiding like Adam into harmonious relationship with the Lord and our brothers? And if so, how?
I do believe that, in answer to your question. And one of the things that I'm beginning to observe, the millennials, Gen Zs, that generation, they have become more community oriented.
Okay.
They have more of a neighborhood mentality.
Okay.
My youngest boy, Jaleel, right now, he's living in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And he started a ministry there. And the ministry is called The Neighborhood. And he has now been able to engage people where they started with about 4 people in a Bible study. And now it's grown to about 80, 90 folks that they have gathering every week at a Bible study. These are all millennials.
That's great.
All millennials, with another 3,000 or 4,000 that are watching them online.
Yes.
And they are intentional about this whole neighborhood aspect of what they want to do as far as their lives are concerned, that they live according to the book of Acts, when they had all things in common, and they shared everything. That's the mentality. That has, without a doubt, provided me the hope that you're talking about right now. That there is a generation that God is raising that now is not reflecting back on what it's like Gideon. When Gideon said, well, where's all the miracles and where's all the stuff that they was talking about to you about and all that? Where is it? Well, that's what this generation has been asking.
Yeah.
Where is it? All of the things that you said that God is and how he's love and how he cares and he's so concerned, we don't see it. Yeah. And so they have come to a point to where they don't want what we had. They don't want a talking God. They want a God who actually is engaged and a God who actually that can provide intimate relationship with his people, with his sons and their daughters.
Wow.
So yes, I'm very hopeful.
You seem to be. So our generation then pretty much is toast. We've kind of reached this wall where I think we function, but not effectively.
And Eric, if I could say this, I think a reason why for that, we weren't taught it.
Yeah, that's true.
And also reflecting on the fact that men from our generation in particular have never been able to give to their sons and even their daughters what they never received themselves.
That's true.
I never knew my grandfather on my dad's side. Never knew my grandmother on my dad's side. Yeah. I knew they were sharecroppers and so forth. That was what. And so I had to, at a point, let my dad off the hook, so to speak.
Yeah. Because
I had to come to a place where I understood he could never provide for me what he was never taught himself. Because we were taught independence. Yeah. You're taught, hey, you make it happen. Yeah. You'll get it. You'll do it for yourself. If you don't do it yourself, it ain't gonna be done. Yeah. That kind of mentality. And even though this man, uneducated man, he only went up to 3rd grade. As uneducated, but man, open up a car hood to him. He'd look inside that car, man, fix almost anything. Wow. But never taught me. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So he never ever gave me the things that he did possess that I could have also passed on to my sons. But then, like I said, I had to become intentional. And it was only in fact because I also had to go into the military, like you. I applaud you, sir. You're a Marine that you still are.
For the wrong reason.
Yeah, right.
I was trying to get away from this.
Yeah, you understand. But I was in the military, and that exposed me to a whole new world. Yeah. And so I had to become more communal, in that period of time, because you understand, you're thrust together with all of these personalities from all over the country, and then we're in different countries, we're in different cities and states, and you got to learn this stuff, man, and if in fact you don't depend on the guy who's next to you, it could cost you your life.
Sure.
And so I learned from being in that environment. And then after that, I ended up going into the music industry where you have to be communal. Yeah. As well, and so I think that has been a large part of my makeup and my mentality when it comes down to wanting to engage people and be more friendly.
What is God looking for in a man on a very elementary level? Something that our listeners can grab hold of, and wives can take it back to their husband during their times of conversation, and fathers can give to their sons. I think there is so much uncertainty about the will and the plan and the process of God. We tell people God is our father, but as you said earlier, if you don't have a father, how do you relate to him? I have no problem with the discipline of God because my father taught us discipline. So it was okay with me. If God said no, okay, I'm used to that. But there is a whole generation who don't have a father's input, and we're telling them, trust God, he's your father. What is God looking for in a man as you begin to teach these truths to people to transform their minds?
I look at it with surrender.
Okay.
If we're on the streets and we do something that transgresses the law, the first thing you have to do is surrender. Your hands go up.
Yes, sir.
Right? And that's what the Lord is looking for from a man. He just wants his surrender. We have to keep in mind, you were mentioning Adam a moment ago, before God ever gave him a wife and before God gave him work, he gave him himself. Mm-hmm. And that's all that the Lord is looking for, is for a man to surrender and to love him with all his heart, all his soul, all his mind, all his strength. That's all. Isaiah says, if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good or the fruit of the land. And so that's all he wants from a man, if he'll just surrender. When you said, Adam, where are you? And of course, we know he was not asking Adam where he was geographically.
Right.
Adam, where are you with me?
Yeah.
That's all it wants. And so that's all the Lord is looking for. He's looking for his son to come back to him, and to just surrender his life to him in full totality, and to understand that all he has to do is to obey God, and then watch the Lord perform through him all the things that he wants him to be able to accomplish and to achieve here on this planet. And I mean, no disrespect to any of our sisters who may be listening or watching right now, but we have to understand that we've allowed a matriarchal society to prevail in the land, when it is that God initially made it to be patriarchal, where the man was supposed to take the lead. But just like you said, he has deferred or just given away his leadership rights in the household to his wife.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you serving as a musician, a pastor, and now moving into this territorial ministry of apostle. When we begin to reach out to men, do you feel that the pulpits today do a good job in communicating the truth that you just mentioned, that God wants relationship? Because particularly in the Pentecostal arena, it's this hard holiness that almost challenges a man's manhood. And so now he sees God as an adversary rather than a father and a companion to lead me through. How would you encourage pastors that are watching this broadcast to build up their men and enable them to step into positions of spiritual power and prestige?
I believe that pastors have now got to become more engaging with the men. There are too many ministries where there is no men's ministry at all. Mm-hmm. No pastor is reaching out to these men. And also, they themselves too often feminize the congregation because the gist of their presentation of the word leans more so to the women, because of the fact that, again, they can become very hyped, emotional, and that's what. And I ain't all that bad, but that's okay. I understand. But girlfriend, you need to do so and so, and hey, sister, and I'm thinking to myself, all these brothers are sitting here. Why are you not talking to them? And I think that that's the reason why a lot of men, after a while, they cancel out the pastor. They ain't listening anymore because they're thinking in their mind, he ain't talking to me. He's talking to the ladies. So he's empowering these women, but not thinking about trying to empower me. How can I possibly lead my household if you take no interest in me? And so more pastors have got to now desire that they're going to Start men's ministries in their church. And if you don't know how, go out and get the information. We live in the information age, and so therefore all the information that you could ever desire or want or need is right there at your fingertips. It's in your hand, on your phone. All you have to do is go for it. And now, especially in the time of AI, let's ask AI.
Okay. Right. How to deal with it.
How should I build a men's ministry? In seconds, bang, here it is. And so there's no excuse for any pastor not making sure that he empowers the men that he's responsible for.
Yeah.
And also to see now, as I was saying a moment ago, how the pulpit is becoming even feminized. Mm-hmm. We got men now standing before the people of God, men wearing high heels.
Yeah.
And then they're wearing the big hats, and now they got their fingernails polished, and I'm not talking about the clear polish. I'm talking about they just like they look like the women's fingers, And so if a man comes into that environment, he don't want to be there, because of the fact that he's not seeing what it is that he needs to see as strength.
Yes, that's a true observation. In your role as an apostle, you encounter many churches and many pastors. Do you find that a lot of males that step into the pastorate are basically doing it because they don't have leadership in the churches that they're in, and it's this internal drive for leadership, to be a leader? God made men to be leaders. And if he's not getting an opportunity to lead in his church, then he goes out and he starts another church, and it might not be the direction of the Lord, and it winds up shipwrecking everybody. Could the absence of that opportunity to be a leader in their church be the catalyst for a lot of these church plants?
In part.
In part.
I would say in part. Only because of the fact also, Eric, is that many men, the only way they will ever be anybody is in the church.
Yes.
Outside of the church, they're just another statistic.
Yeah.
They're a social security number. Mm-hmm. They don't count, so to speak. So they don't understand what it means to have worth or value. And the only place that they're considered to be somebody is in the church.
Yeah.
And so they go after it many times for that reason, because now when I'm out here, I'm just, Joe Johnson. Mm-hmm. But when I come in here, I'm Reverend Doctor, and so respect me, and to understand that respect comes from identity.
Yeah.
All you have to do is know who you are.
Right.
Once you understand who you are, you get the respect. Okay. And also you become an individual who's confident in your own worth and value as a man. And you understand that you don't need a title to make you someone.
That's a tough transition. You said, a few times in our talk, getting to know who you are. I need you to unpack that a little more for people that are listening, because you hear it a lot. Get to know who you are. What's the basis of that? I mean, what am I looking for when you say get to know who you are?
If any man be in Christ, he's a new creation.
Mm-hmm.
Old things are passed away. Mm-hmm. Behold, all things have become new. Mm-hmm. To be a man who now finds himself, as you were saying earlier, in relationship with Christ. And that's how simple it is. I know it may sound oversimplified, but at the end of the day, that's all that it's really about. Moreover, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son. And that should be the aspiration and goal and objective for every man. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And that's what the Lord is looking for, a man who is desirous of being like his Heavenly Father. But like you said, again, it becomes difficult, because if I see God as displaced, as I see God as someone who I can't reach or I can't touch, then how does that all actually come into being, or into play? And again, it's because of the fact that now, one of the other things that we don't have is that we don't have any sort of accountability.
Okay.
We don't have accountability.
Okay.
Many men have no accountability. Jonathan and David, that's my go-to on that one, man.
You're great.
And these two guys just so loved each other, very much so, to the point to where Jonathan was willing to just to strip himself of everything. He takes off his armor and everything. And basically, I believe what he's saying is that, hey, David, here I am. I'm just Jonathan. You know, I'm just David. And if we could come to that place where we can put all the other facades aside and just be real with one another and to be vulnerable, because they were both naked and not ashamed. And so can a man come to a point to where he's transparent and be willing to express his innermost feelings? Because you know that a minute, just like you and I are talking today, we're expressing ourselves, being very transparent.
Sure.
But many men are not willing to go there.
Yeah.
They're not going to say, hey, you know, never, would you hear a man say, I'm a whoremonger? You know, that ain't going to happen.
Not in our culture.
Now, that's what I'm talking about.
In Japhethite cultures, they do that.
Yes.
They sit around and talk about addiction to pornography,
Yes.
stepping out and having immoral relationships. There's something about the culture of a black man that does closet them and keep them away from the things that are positive.
Pride.
Okay.
Pride. And that's what it comes down to. We're proud men and should be.
Yes.
Of course, we definitely should be. But we're proud. And sometimes on the negative side, though, of pride, you know, to where it is that we won't allow ourselves to, as you're saying, express ourselves about the weaknesses that we have, you know, and especially we would definitely be remiss in not saying that many men will never ever be vulnerable even to the women in their lives.
Yeah, that's true.
What's wrong, honey? Nothing. Nothing. That's the go-to.
Yeah, well,
nothing.
I do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And you know,
that's how I was taught.
Exactly right. And the same for me. When I came into this apostolic role that the Lord has me walking in now, when I first left Freedom, and my wife and I it was about 4 months later, and my wife and I were at home one day, and she looked over at me, she said, honey, she said, how you doing? And I gave it a normal man answer. I said, I'm fine, everything's okay, no problem. She left where she was, and I have an ottoman that sits in front of my favorite chair at home. She got up from where she was, she sat down on the ottoman, she leaned into me, and she said, now tell me how you really feel.
I can't do it. I cannot do it. I hear daddy's voice in my ear. Don't tell anybody anything.
Don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody anything.
But I did, Eric, I did. And I told her, I said, well, you know what? I said, right now, I said, I'm in a place of uncertainty. I said, right now, I said, I don't really know what to do. I said, I'm not hearing the voice, the voice of the Lord and his guidance for what my next steps are supposed to be. And I said, I'm just in that place. So she said, okay. So she prayed with me. And then not long after that, the Spirit of the Lord did speak to me. And he said something that was so profound to me, man, that it made me shudder when he said it. And he said, I allowed you to sit these 4 months and to do nothing. He said, because I wanted to make sure that I got the people out of your heart.
Oh, wow.
He said, because I don't want you sitting in someone else's pulpit, and I have an assignment for you, and you are there wondering about what's going on back at Freedom.
Yeah.
So he let me sit. and that, without a doubt, helped to rearrange my psyche.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess so.
Oh, yeah.
When you have God telling you that.
Exactly. But that becomes an issue for many men in our culture.
Sure.
Because we are very impatient.
Yeah.
And we want things to happen like now. You know, and if in fact things are not happening, then I know what I'm going to do. I'll make it happen.
Make it happen. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Much to their chagrin.
That's how we are.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, you'll have people now watching us, and some men that are watching us are husbands.
True.
And, you know, they're at a stage where things are beginning to kind of fall apart. And as you said earlier, there's no connection, no accountability. So he tries to wrestle with these things on his own. As you sit there sharing with these brothers who are in the valley of decision, the prophet says, what are some steps they can take to rebuild that marriage and that relationship? Because we want them to have fruitful and effective marriages and lives, which then translates into a very spirit-directed church. What would you say from your perspective in transforming the minds of men? What would you say to them to help them get back on the track of success?
One of the things that I really believe, men, is that you need to trust the woman that you married, because we see her as this beautiful individual. On the day of the wedding, everything is just great and great. Got your tuxedo on, she's in her gown, and everything is wonderful. And you're thinking about the marital bliss that you're going to be sharing with one another. But then we come into marriage and find out that marriage is much more than just that wedding day. That now I am in an upfront and close and now personal relationship with this other human being who is just as imperfect as I am. And now I've got to be able to trust my innermost feelings even with this other individual and not hide from her the way I've hidden from everybody else.
Wow. Okay.
Because my thing is, why in the world would I even marry her if I don't respect her mind?
Okay.
And I should be able to share with her where I am so that she can also give me benefit of being my helper.
Wow. Okay.
Because she's supposed to help me. Okay. That's why the Lord put her in my life. She's supposed to help me. However, if I don't give her anything to help me with, then in actuality, she's not able to fulfill her role in the relationship. And so now, do we really have a relationship, or do we just have we're roommates?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you were saying, as we begin to wane and our bodies start to break down, we're getting older, we start to gray, all of that, right? And so what if we don't build proper relationship in the earlier years of the relationship? What are we going to possibly have once we get down to the place where we're empty nesters?
That's good.
Because if in fact we don't form relationship up here, then when we get on the back end, then we don't even know each other.
Yeah, have nothing going.
And the kids are gone. I'll never forget, I was in a place called Sandusky, Ohio.
Yeah.
Do you know? Okay.
I know.
Okay. So I was in Sandusky and I was doing a marital workshop, right? And so I finished doing the teaching, and at the end, a lady raised her hand, asked a question, and she said, well, I hear all the things that you're saying. She said, but right now, she said, our children are gone, we're empty nesters now, and we're having a difficult time trying to navigate, what's going to happen with our relationship and so on. And she said, well, what in the world should I do? So I gave it about 10, 15 seconds, and then I said, party. Their party. She looked at me real well. I said, yes. I said, this is the time what you should have been planning for. This is the time when you knew that ultimately the kids are going to be gone, grandkids doing their thing, and now there's nothing but the two of you. And I said, and that is probably in the African-American persuasion, that is probably one of the greatest detriments to relationship, because we don't plan for the back end.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is scary.
You sit there and look at each other and suddenly realize, I really don't know this person.
Exactly.
Because we were so busy getting braces, doing school stuff, all those things that parents do.
Yes.
And now it's just us. And a lot of men, so your initial recommendation is trust. Trust her.
Yeah, you got to trust
her. Which really
her.
encompasses everything.
And to trust her with your innermost feelings.
Wow.
And to trust her by speaking those things that bring transparency to your life, and to trust her that she will not weaponize the things that you shared with her against you at some later date.
Wow. Man, that's not easy, Apostle Coleman. That's not easy. I don't even have words to say. It's not easy, but I agree with you. It is a necessary tool as we grow older. In fact, as we grow older, trust becomes more of a necessity, because as you said, we get older, we lose some of those youthful capabilities. Now I got to trust somebody to take me to my doctor's visits, and trust people to make sure I'm cared for. Yeah, that is a very dynamic.
And then I would say spending more intentional time together.
Yeah.
To want to be in each other's presence.
Okay.
And to begin to find the levels of commonality that exist between the two of you. What do you really have in common?
Wow.
Because like you said, what we had in common previously was the kids, the grandkids, going to recitals and, and baseball games, basketball games, all those things, taking them to the circus and all that. Now But what do we have in common? Point of question, I'll be transparent on this. So for the longest, I've always been a sports fan, always. My wife knew that coming in, that I was a sports fan. And she really was not. Well, it amazes me because of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, now she's become this football fan all of a sudden. Now, most times, when I'm watching the game, she go up to her office, and go on the phone with her girlfriends or whatever. Now, not just the Eagles, but I'm watching another game the other night, and she came and sat down. Who's playing? I said, why are you asking? I said, you don't like this? She said, I want to know who's now the thing is, though, men, we're supposed to also be teachers.
Right.
We're supposed to be teachers.
Right.
So now get yourself prepared, because if in fact she comes into what you consider to be your world, be ready to teach her.
That's
because
great.
she's going to be 1,000 questions.
That's great.
Well, what about this? And well, why they do this? Why they do that? And so, but that becomes a part of the newfound relationship that you establish with one another.
Something to build on.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. Well, we've reached the end of our podcast today, and it's been a delight sitting with Apostle Coleman. And I just want to share with you again this new book that he has, Transforming the Minds of Men. And we really want you to get a copy of this into your hands. And ladies, wives, even if you're dating a man, get a copy of this, give it to them, and you'll be making your life better when God begins to transform the minds of your man. We thank you for joining us, and it's always a pleasure to sit with you, share biblical principles from a very relaxed environment. We don't want to preach to you, but we do want you to understand that every problem you encounter has a biblical answer. Somewhere in those 66 books is an answer for your problem. And so we want to encourage every man watching to make a conscious effort to get this book in their hands and find a place in your church where you can connect, grow, develop as a leader, and take your place on Nehemiah's wall. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a privilege to be with you on Shifting Times, and we want you to ask yourself this one question. Is Jesus your Lord? If he's not your Lord, surrender your life to him today, and he will joy in living inside of you and walking with you every day. We pray the blessing of the Lord will be in your life, and the peace of God will govern your mind, and the joy of the Lord will ever be your strength. Until next time, walk with the Lord, and he surely will walk with you.